Hi, my name is Bill Corm with Prison Power Ministries, and I'm so excited to be here today. I'm really excited because my wife doesn't get to be with me often, and today I have my wife Debbie with me, and that is exciting. So, we are going to be talking with our friend Stephanie Hoarding, and Stephanie has a story that is amazing. And so, we're going to let Stephanie tell her story at this time. Stephanie, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Stephanie, and I'm the oldest of four. I grew up in Shawnee, Kansas, and I was I am the older sister. I'm the bossy one. I'm the second mom. So, um, my parents struggled with addiction as well. I struggled with addiction, obviously, but now that I'm older, I understand more what my parents went through. That it wasn't that we weren't enough. That's what I used to think is why aren't we enough for you to stop? And it was never that. It was they just didn't know how.
Yeah.
So we struggled growing up. My parents, I could tell they weren't normal. They weren't like my friends' mom and dad. And I noticed that about fourth grade. They were in the bathroom a lot, and especially at night. And I remember thinking like they were one person when they went into the bathroom, and they came out a completely different person. I remember that. Like their whole demeanor changed, their whole face changed, and I hated that. I didn't want them to go in that bathroom, and anything I could do to not let them go in that bathroom, but they kept going.
So even at that age, you knew something just wasn't
Something.
right. It didn't
Yeah.
feel right.
And of course I didn't know what drugs were. I just knew they were different. So, we called into school a lot, and I think, they just didn't want to get up and help us get ready for school. So we're like, yes, we want to stay home. But that obviously comes with some things, the tardiness, the absence in school. So it kind of triggered a response from the state. So they wanted to come do a welfare check on us children. And I think it scared my parents. So their grand idea was to take us on the run for a year. We didn't know it was going to be for a year, but it just ended up being about a year. We weren't in school. Us four kids weren't in school. We couldn't contact our families. And again, looking back as an adult now, I think my parents were just scared and they didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you make things worse.
Well, they were on drugs.
They were on drugs.
So you make bad decisions on drugs.
Exactly. You think you're doing something
Yeah.
and you're actually snowballing that
Right.
into something so much
Right.
bigger.
Yes.
So when they got caught, I say we, I didn't do anything wrong at that time. When they got caught shoplifting, we were taken into custody as children as well. And I remember it being 4th of July weekend, so it was a long weekend. And that was heart wrenching because we were
Yes.
separated as children. I went to a girls' home. My brother, who's a year younger than me, went to the boys' home next door. And then I have two younger sisters that went to a house together. And it was just until they could figure out what they wanted to do with us.
And you being the older and kind of like the mom figure for them, how did the younger ones, did they freak out and you're trying to comfort them so you're feeling all their
Yeah, I mean,
stuff?
when we were in the police station, I can remember holding my two younger sisters, and they were crying, and one on each arm. And then when we got separated, I went to the girls' home, and they went to a foster home for the weekend. I was just, I could feel the anxiety in my stomach because I wanted to make sure they were okay. I didn't know if someone was being mean to them. So when we did go to court, a custody hearing, we were shackled from oldest to youngest, us kids, from hands to our ankles. And I can remember my parents being in the courtroom.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. Johnson County.
Did they have y'all chained together? Or
We did, yep.
Did they
Oh
really?
my
Yeah.
gosh.
Wow.
And so it's funny the way the brain works. I can remember glimpses of things, but I can just remember being like, what did we do? I was so confused as a child. And my parents were in the courtroom, and my grandparents, my mom's mom and dad, took custody of us, guardianship. And so I was about 13, 14 years old. And my dad got 2.5 years for interfering with child custody. So he went to prison. And my mom was on probation, and she got to stay at her mom and dad's house with us, at our grandparents' house, and help us. We were out of school for a year, and we had to go back to the same school that we had just left. So it was hard as a child because you're
kidding.
like, all your friends you haven't talked to in a year, and you're just gone, and now you're back.
Was your
And-
mom using it at the time still?
Not at the time.
Oh.
Not at the time. Because she had just gotten released from jail, and now she was on house arrest, and she had the giant machine. It was gray, and it lit up. The phone would ring at night, and she'd have to blow into this thing, and they'd take a picture of you, and it looked like a giant computer, like an old computer. And so I do remember she divorced my dad in prison. And we went to bed one night, and we were getting ready to go to school the next day, and we woke up, and she was gone. And she had divorced my dad, but she had also divorced, I felt like, us children. And there was a lot of abuse going on that I didn't realize. I mean, I saw, my mom would have a black eye in the morning, and she'd say, oh, I just, hit my head on the cabinet,
Yeah.
And I knew it was a lie. But again, as an adult, you see things in another way, that your parents are just people too. They don't know what they're doing.
Trying to survive.
Exactly. There's no manual on being an adult or being a parent. So I understood. At the time, I didn't understand. But I did understand that she got some type of freedom when he went to prison. And I loved my dad. I loved my parents. So when she left, it was kind of like this midlife crisis of she's 21 again. And so we didn't see her. So my grandparents were getting ready to retire. And I can remember my grandma saying, we didn't want to be parents again. We just didn't want to see you guys split up in a different home.
Ow.
So I remember helping. My brother always took care of himself. He was a year younger than me. He's a year younger than me. He always took care of himself. But the two youngest ones, my sisters, I always took care of. And I would call them my girls. I remember going to counseling and saying, my girls. And she's like, they're not your girls.
Yeah.
And getting them on the bus, helping them with homework. So this went on for a little while. And by the time I was 16, I could emancipate myself. And so I emancipated myself, and I was my own person. And so I'd call myself into school. I mean, at 16, 17 years old, that's not something you kind of, I shouldn't have been able to have that opportunity, because
Right.
I would just, I'm not going to school today. See you later, bye.
Mm-hmm.
So, my idea was to get a full-time job, get insurance, start making some money, get my own apartment, and then I was going to adopt my siblings.
Oh, really?
So my grandparents, they were getting ready to retire, and they wanted to go down to the Lake of the Ozarks. They had a lake house down there. And I mean, who could blame them? They've
Yeah.
worked their whole life.
Yeah.
So I did get a job at a preschool, and I loved it. And
You were already trained because
Already.
you'd already raised your youngest.
yes, yeah. And
siblings.
I think that was always something on my heart, was I wanted to be a parent. I wanted to be a mother so bad, because I didn't want to be like my parents. I loved my parents, but I just knew what not to do.
Not to do, yeah.
And I wanted that opportunity. And I swear I would be different, So I just took classes that they offered at this early education program, to help me work my way up to a lead teacher instead of an assistant teacher. And I had a great job, at my age. I mean, like almost 18, and I'm like, I'm doing this, I wanted to get my sisters with me. My brother was getting ready to go to the Marines. This is a couple of years down the road. And I got my own apartment. And what it really turned into was I was the one out of my friends that had their own apartment. So I was working full time at the preschool, and my friends were still in school and still in high school. So it was this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like preschool teacher during the day and partier at night.
Because you were the hub.
I
You
was
were
the
where
hub.
to go.
So stepping over people to get ready to go to work, that was just the norm, And I did not adopt my sisters. They ended up moving down to the lake with my grandparents, and I got a sense of freedom as well, that I didn't have to be under somebody anymore, that I could make my own decisions, and I was going to make better decisions. And of course it didn't end up like that.
Right.
So going a little further down the road, drugs were an issue for me, but it was also relationships. So men are a part of my story, and now that I'm older, I think it's because I wanted to be loved so bad,
Yeah.
you
Sure.
know. And
Yep.
I loved my father and I loved my mother, and I just wanted some type of consistency, stability.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I would believe everybody but my parents. So I didn't even have to know you, and you'd tell me something, and I'm like,
It was the gospel truth.
you're lying. You're telling me the truth, because as long as you weren't my parents, I knew you were telling me the truth, because they never followed through with anything. I couldn't count on them. So that went on for several years, and I had a surgery in 2009. And laparoscopy. So I had cyst on my uterus, and so I had surgery, and it was right before the opiate epidemic, and I was prescribed Oxycontin, and I was still teaching preschool at another preschool at this time, and they just kept prescribing me Oxycontin, and as an addict, I one would make me feel good. What would 3 do? So if the bottle said take 1, I'm taking 3.
So at that point, because you were the party house, they started dabbling with that stuff.
Yes.
And
yeah.
it's still functioning at your job.
Yeah, because I thought it was normal. I thought it was normal to do some cocaine at a party.
Mom and Dad did
or
it.
take some acid and go to the zoo. Like it was, this sounds crazy. I thought it was fun. That was when it was fun. And my friend, we looked out for each other and we took care of each other. And, it wasn't anything crazy yet. It was just having fun. And what I realized that I didn't know was I wanted the party to continue. So after everybody's like, okay, it's time to go. And I'm like, what? We're just getting started.
Right.
I didn't know that turn off button, but I didn't know that was the addict in me. I had no idea.
That was me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And my parents were crack addicts. So I'm like, well, as long as it's not crack, I should be fine. I'm not going to do crack. I'm not like them. So when I had the surgery in 2009 and they gave me opiates, it's like I felt comfortable in my own skin. I could actually exhale. I always say it was my warm blanket. It just made me feel better in my own skin. It made me feel calm. And I'm so anxious always as is that I had just found something to help me breathe. So everything, I was in pain. So everything was painful, of course. And so I'm like, oh, I need more. Oh, I need more. Oh, I need more. And they just kept prescribing it. And so finally I got cut off from them, and I was still teaching preschool, and I got really sick. And I thought it was the flu. I mean, my bones hurt though. Everything in me hurt. It hurt to breathe. The shower, the water on my skin hurt my skin. And I'm like, something's wrong. And of course, the guy I was seeing was like, you're withdrawing. And I'm like, there's no way. Only addicts withdraw. I'm not an addict.
I'm in full control
I'm
still.
in full control. So he said, we could get heroin. You get more of it. It lasts longer. And it's stronger. And I'm like, I'll never cross that line, ever cross that line. And of course I crossed that line. And then the needle came and I crossed that line. And I started using, injecting it, which I never thought I would do. And when I had the Oxycontin pills, I was crushing them up it's awful. I was crushing them up in the classroom while the kids were sleeping and snorting them, while they're sleeping. It's funny because as a little girl, I didn't say I'm going to be a junkie when I grow up.
Right.
Like that's not something that you're not having fun.
Yeah.
At some point you're not having fun.
I ask that question to inmates sometimes. How many of you, when you were 8 years old, said, I want to grow up and be an inmate?
Right.
Nobody thinks about that.
No. But it's funny because it just spirals so quickly that before you know it, it's 10 years later and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
So when they cut me off of the Oxycontin and I started doing the heroin, all hell broke loose. I'm crossing every line I said I would never cross. So of course you can't hold a job like that.
Yeah.
But I had become a dental assistant for a pediatric dentist's office. So I had really good insurance, thankfully. And I remember cleaning this little boy's teeth, and I was falling asleep as I'm cleaning his teeth. And he's at the bed, and I'm cleaning his teeth, and his mama's at the very end. And I see that she sees me kind of fading out, kind of nodding. And so I said, oh gosh, I gotta tell somebody or else I'm gonna get in trouble. So I went to my boss and I said, I need help. So I went to this place called Valley Hope in Atchison, Kansas. And it's a really fancy rehab. And you have to have insurance there. I mean, I don't know, something like $2,000 a day or something
Wow.
crazy.
It's expensive.
It's
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
But they have chocolate milk on a dispensary, like a dispenser. It was the best chocolate milk ever. And so I went there and I got put on Suboxone, and it's 30 days. And of course, I met Prince Charming in rehab. And I just thought,
It's uphill from here.
that we could help each other, that we could save each other. So we both got released and graduated, and we went to Oxford House. It's sober living, women's house, men's house. And I didn't know, but I had gotten pregnant while I was in rehab. Either right in rehab or right after rehab is around that time. I can't pinpoint it. Bottom line is I got pregnant and I didn't know it. It was my first pregnancy. I've never had a scare. And remember, I've crossed every line. I wasn't safe out there when I was working. And I just never even had a scare. I just thought I couldn't have kids. That's what I was told. I mean, that's what that surgery was about in 2009. So when I found out I was pregnant, I had already gone back to rehab. I wasn't even out 30 days. And we had both started using again. He would use and then not tell me. So I would use and not tell him. I mean, it was just back and forth.
Sounds
thing.
like our life
Yeah.
before.
Back and forth. I mean, you know it. If you're in any type of relationship, you're like, wait, did you use? Oh, now I get to use
I
now.
give permission
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It's my turn.
It's really silly, you
Yeah.
know? So he went back to Atchison Valley Hope before I could make it back to Atchison Valley Hope first. So I went to Boonville Valley Hope. And I remember being there, and I had only been using less than 30 days, and I was so tired I couldn't get out of bed. And I knew it wasn't withdrawals. I'm like, this has never happened before. I didn't know what was happening. Well, I found out I was pregnant. And I didn't know it. And they were searching my room. They could have swore, they were like, we know you're using. I'm like, I swear I just can't get out of bed. I'm so tired. So I thought, this is what's going to save me. I'm going to be the best mom, and that's okay. Everything's okay. So when I got out, I was living here in Overland Park, and I was walking to work. I was living with a family member, and I had told my daughter's father, his name's Nick, that I was pregnant. And while he was back at Atchison Valley Hope, he met somebody else, and they left rehab together. So he didn't care.
He didn't care.
He didn't care, and this is my first baby. I found out through Facebook that she was pregnant as well. So 2 months after I found out I was pregnant, she was pregnant. And he's taken her to the doctors. He's giving her,
Ouch.
pregnancy craving foods and rubbing her feet. And I was angry. Because I just thought, well, what's wrong with me and my baby? So I immediately, I went to the dope house while pregnant. And he would make me wait outside until everyone was gone because he didn't want anyone to know he was serving a pregnant lady. And it's funny because he would preach to me when he would give me the dope. He'd say, oh, Lord, forgive me for what I'm about to do. Forgive me. And I'm like, would you just shut up and give it to me? Can you just shut up? But I didn't know how to be a mom. My mother wasn't mothered. Her mother wasn't mothered.
Probably wasn't.
So
mothered.
it's this generational thing that I had no idea existed.
Yeah.
And when I felt her move in my belly, I got scared. So I was about 6 months pregnant. And I walked in there and I said, I need to talk to someone. I'm an IV drug user and I'm pregnant and I don't know how to stop. And I'm terrified that I'm going to hurt her. That's not my intention to hurt her. I just didn't know I didn't know what to do in life. So I went to parenting classes. I was watched, as in, you'll take UAs every so often to make sure you're clean. And she was born November 21st, 2014, and she was perfect. Her name's Presley. And when they put her on my chest, I didn't know. I just kept saying, I didn't know it was you. I didn't know it was you, and I didn't know you were. I just didn't know it was a real thing. Once you see her face,
Till you hold them.
I just couldn't believe I had done something like that. So they had given me hydrocodone because you just gave birth, and I was living in a sober living Oxford House, women's Oxford House, women and children. And I didn't think that hydrocodone would do anything to me. I thought it's aspirin. It's more aspirin than it is hydros. But what it did was open up this box in my head. But I was off to the races before I knew it. And I was trying to stay normal and not let anyone know that I had fallen. And I was so hard on myself. I just kept kicking myself. And so I'd just go get more. And I'd go get more, and I just didn't know how to stop. So, of course, there's another relationship that I'm in. And I met him when I was 6 months pregnant. And we stayed together. And so this went on for about a year and a half of her little life. And hand in hand, drugs and criminal activity go hand in hand. So I was getting high and I was shoplifting, of course. And I got caught shoplifting. I got into some legal trouble and I needed to go do some jail time because I couldn't stay clean. And so every UA I had, I was dirty. So I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do the UA. So I knew I was going to have to do some jail time. And so I was violating my probation. I reached out to my daughter's father and then the girl that he is still with. They had 2 kids at this point. They had another baby, which it's wonderful. I begged him to be a part of her life, which I shouldn't have. And I don't know why I begged him. But I remember what it was like when my dad called my grandma's house and, from prison. And she'd be like, "It's your effing dad." And I'm like, oh, I felt so guilty for loving my dad.
Yeah.
I loved him though. I knew who he was, but that was my dad. So I didn't want my daughter to ever feel like in trouble for loving her daddy. Yeah. So I guess that's probably why I pushed him. And if this is how it's going to have to be, then that's okay. Let's just be cordial for the children, if this is how it's going to have to be. Because ultimately, these are my daughter's sisters, that the children that you guys have. Presley and her other sister were only 2 months apart. They were like little twins. They loved each other. So I knew I was going to have to do some jail time. And him and I met in rehab. They met in rehab. I don't know why we're acting like we're brand new. Like we all know that we've struggled with addiction. All of us have. And so I have to do some jail time. Can you watch her until I get done? I have to do this 30 days or whatever it was. They'll reinstate my probation and then we'll be fine. She's barely talking and I don't want her to go in foster care.
Yeah.
I mean, you're her father. Wholeheartedly, I thought that was the right decision. So I turned myself in early November. I dropped her off October 31st, Halloween night at their house. And of course, I wanted one last shebang until I went to jail, which is, I don't think that's abnormal to have that mindset.
No.
I didn't think that was going to be the last time I saw her. So I went to jail. And by the time I had to wait for a bed to open in Wyandotte County Mears for a treatment bed for rehab. So I had to wait a little longer. So I think it was about 60 days and then the bed opened up.
So they had you stay in the jail 60 days waiting for a bed. So that made it even longer.
It made it even longer. And they're not answering my phone calls at this point. Nick and Lindsay stopped answering my phone calls. So they would just reject my call. So every time I called from jail, she'd just reject it. And I can remember calling her something like 17 times over and over again. Like I'd hang up and I'd call right back. I'd hang up and I'd call right back.
Yeah.
Because I was so angry because I just wanted to check on my daughter. You don't have to keep rejecting my phone calls. So when I finally got to rehab, again, I was shackled. They called body receipt is what they called it. So I was body receipted to rehab. So if I left the premises of that rehab, I violate my probation automatically. So they brought me from jail in my jail clothes to rehab. And I was 4 days into rehab. And we went to classes all day long. And then at night, we had dinner at 5 and then you could watch TV. And I didn't have my phone. You had to wait for phone time.
X amount of days.
It's killing you because you're like, what's going on? I can't figure out what's going on. I thought they were angry with me. In total, my daughter's father has 6 kids by 5 different women. My daughter was number 4. So his last 2 are 5 and 6. So the 3 babies before my daughter, they're paying each different mothers, they're paying child support. So I thought he was trying to take her away from me because I thought they thought that I was going to get him for child support. So I really thought it was just they were angry with me. 4 days into rehab, we have dinner. I go to class all day long. We have dinner, and I'm just angry because no one will answer my phone calls. I'm mad that I'm there. And I remember this older lady watching the news, and I remember hearing breaking news, death investigation of a toddler. And I looked up, and it had my daughter's picture on the TV.
Oh, Stephanie.
And so words wouldn't form at all. I couldn't comprehend, and I couldn't form words to tell her, the person working, like, that's my daughter. That's what I was trying to get out. But
You were probably just like
shock.
nightmare material here.
I'm like, wait. It's like my brain has been in a car accident. Nothing was functioning. And so I work at a rehab now, and I think about people coming into rehab and how sometimes they're a little cuckoo for your Cocoa Puffs. So who knows what this woman was thinking about me. And I finally said, that's my daughter. You know, and I'm saying all the words, all the cuss words. Like, you're not getting it. That's my daughter. She's like, that's not your daughter. Sit down. So I'm screaming. So she locks everyone down. I'm screaming at this point because I'm not getting her attention. So she locks everybody down in their rooms. Everyone go to your rooms. So she calls the Gardner Police Department, and we wait. And we get someone that calls back, and this detective says, ma'am, are you sitting down? And I went off. I'm like, what do you mean am I sitting down? I see it on the news. I'm her mother.
What a nice way to learn.
I'm her mother. She has my last name. Why hasn't anyone called me? So I left rehab that night. Now, I was not supposed to leave rehab that night. I automatically violated my probation. But I didn't care because my plan was not to be here. Like, if this is true, I'm out. So I left rehab, and I didn't have anywhere to go. My grandmother's at a assisted living in Overland Park. And so the police met me over there, and my family came. I was 64 days clean that day. And I remember the detective saying, he took my phone, and he's looking at my phone, and he's zooming in on pictures of her face, my daughter's face. So I stole my grandmother's car, and I got high. When I got down to the drug dealer's house that made me wait until everyone left to give me drugs when I was pregnant with her, the whole house is crying. They have the news on. All of my friends from the trap house were all just sobbing, and I just couldn't stop crying. I couldn't even stop crying long enough to shoot up in my neck. So someone else had to do it, and I couldn't. I mean, I'm the whole time.
Yeah.
And they're like, stop crying. It's okay. It'll be okay in just 1 minute. Just stop crying. I think about that and how sad that is.
Yeah.
Like, I feel sad for that girl. So my family got really scared, and they called the police, and the police came. I got a Kleenex, thank you. The police came to the dope house, and they were really kind, and they were crying, and they put me in the psych ward. They took me to the psych ward because I couldn't function. They let me go to her funeral. And since I already violated my probation, I had to go back to jail after her funeral. Which it really did save my life. I didn't know it at the time.
I was about to say you'd lost everything, so you didn't probably care.
No.
And that was the jail you went to was where?
In Johnson County.
And who was there?
So 2 weeks prior to getting out, they called me down for a medication appointment. I mean, they automatically put me on all sorts of meds when I got there. So I had to do a 60 days flat, and then I was done with probation. They were just going to complete it. And so they called me down for a med call, and I come down there, and it's in booking, and it's the detective on my case, and he said, hey, just want to let you know Lindsay's been arrested for first-degree murder. And I remember thinking, okay, I got to call my mom. I want to call my dad. I want to call my family. And then I realized she's in the same jail as me. So I figured they already had her dressed out and fingerprinted and upstairs in Max. I'm in minimum, so it wasn't terrible. So I'm sitting in booking, and I can see when you just get arrested, there's some cells to your right, and they're still in their street clothes. The people are still in their street clothes. So those doors will pop. They'll come out. They'll sit on, men sit on one side, women sit on the other, and they'll dress you out. They'll get your fingerprints. They'll take your pictures. So I look over and I see that there's people still in their street clothes, and I see
Her.
Lindsay, one who killed my daughter. And so my first thought was, oh, I'm just going to wait for those doors to pop open and they bring them out, and I'm just going to, I'm going to take care of it. I mean, I don't care if I have 2 weeks left. I'm done anyways. So they have Crocs. You have Crocs that you wear, these cute little Crocs. I took off the Crocs and I get up, and this guard said, "Porting, your ride's on his way down to take you back up to your cell." And I said, "Okay." Well, then I thought, I don't want her to not see me. I want her to see me. I want her to know, I don't know what I thought, So I walked over to the cell and I just started hitting the window, and I just said all the words, and I said, "I'm going to watch you rot in hell." And I started screaming, "Baby killer, she killed my baby. She beat my baby." And she looked at me and she just chuckled. She laughed at me. Mm-hmm. So I just lost it. I just lost it. Like, what happened to you? Well, I didn't know. I knew we weren't friends, but I didn't think we were enemies. I didn't think something like this was going to happen. So when I realized that we're wearing the same outfits, we're eating the same food, we're hearing the same announcements, like, what am I doing? How do I get out of this? How do I stop? I'm in so much pain, I can't breathe. So she and I were housed together. Of course, she was in max, I was in minimum, but I just couldn't believe, and I was a drug addict. I stole some stuff and had some weed on me, and she brutally beat a child to death, and we're in the same
building.
The same building. I don't know how this works, I was so confused. When I got out, I was off probation and everything, which wasn't safe, because my goal was to die. That was my goal. So I just tried everything. I did all the drugs. I committed all the crimes because I didn't think I'd have to answer for them. So it's been 7 years. For the next 5 years, I got clean for a little while, and I didn't know how to function. And sometimes I still don't. I've been in and out of, NA and psych wards and hospitals and all the medication you can think of. When I found a place called Hope City, it's where I'm at now, I was so angry I didn't want to go there, because if there was a God, him and I had problems, because how could you kill my daughter when I was the junkie? I was the low life, and you took her. When I got to Hope City, I was so angry. And I went to Hope City because you could smoke cigarettes there, and it was a longer treatment. It was 90 days to 6 months, and I knew I needed something longer. So when we planned Presley's funeral, my family also had me pick out my casket, and I was so offended, because I'm like, how dare you? Looking back, it's because they knew this was going to kill me. I wasn't stopping. I don't know how I've made it. Now, the only reason I've made it is because of Jesus.
Amen.
He literally saved me, and I don't know why, and I don't know how, because I should be dead. I didn't want to be here, but he saved me. And what I was taught at Hope City is, I'm the head and not the tail.
Yes.
That I am
above and not beneath.
Yeah.
He loves me. He delights in me.
And he sees past our pain and sees into what he's going to make us into.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember when you first came, I remember what you looked like, and, you were very, very hurting and very troubled, and I've watched God turn you into a beautiful flower.
What's amazing is that he saved me.
Amen.
If I would have died, and Presley would have had to grow up without me, I would have gone straight to hell, and I didn't know that. And she would have had to grow up without me. She went right up to heaven.
Straight up.
Straight up to heaven, and she's growing up with the best father, with no trauma.
Yeah.
She's actually waiting on me.
Yes.
Amen.
I just want to finish well. And there are some times where I can't even get out of bed. My daughter's father overdosed on heroin about a year after she died. It wasn't that she just died. We had the court hearings.
Did he die? Oh, he
died.
died?
Wow.
Did he really?
Yeah, which I was really upset.
Nick, Really?
I was really jealous.
I didn't know that.
So I wanted to die like that. He took my dream death. And this is before I came to Hope City. I thought, well, you got to see her last and you got to see her first, you know? You got to see her right before she died because you were there. And then you died, so you got to have to, I thought maybe.
So I get the short end of the stick
right,
both ways?
I'm out here doing the hard work, you know? Did you have to answer to her before you went to wherever you were at? I mean, I didn't know how that worked, you know, and I still don't, you know. I don't know where he's at. I don't know what happened with him and the Lord. I don't.
Right, he might have asked the Lord to forgive him when he took his last
Which
breath.
is crazy to me.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, this woman that beat my daughter, my flesh and blood to death,
Right.
she could be in heaven with me.
It's right.
And so I don't want to be so angry anymore. I'm 2.5 years clean. And I never thought that I would be, I'm not on any medications.
Amen.
Which is huge, you know. I don't want to be so angry. So I started praying for her. Because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid hoping it's going to kill her.
Right.
And I'm
right.
suffering.
Right.
And so I start to think, you know, what happened to you that you felt like you needed to do something like that? Like, what happened to your life that you did something like that? Because no one just does that.
Right.
You must be hurting in some type of way.
Right.
You know, I pray that the Lord meets her in that jail cell. I pray that, you know, she turns her life around and gets right with him.
Well, we talked about that on the way here, Stephanie. And, you know, I've been in prison ministry 38 years, and I could take you to any prison I wanted to take you into. You could go with me. You're going with me in a couple of weeks to a prison. But you can't go in that jail because of her being there.
Right.
If they ever would allow us to take you in, I mean, but we're going to be praying for her to get saved.
Yeah.
We're going to be praying that God wrecks her heart and she pours her life into Jesus. And the day she walks out in 28 years or whatever it is, that she walks out as a believer.
Yeah.
And that just like Gary and Todd at the church hugging each other and saying, I love you. Todd said, we're going to be in heaven together.
Yeah.
Imagine that you could do that someday.
I know. Because I believe she saved my life. I mean, my daughter saved my life.
Right.
I was on a path of destruction. I just didn't care.
Yeah.
I don't want to just get high. I want to stay high, and that's not possible because I hurt so much sometimes. And now just because of her, I mean, my family, you know, I'm the only one saved in my family. And so going from this junkie, now they call me a Bible thumper. Yeah, I'm like,
What a compliment.
you know, you weren't happy either way, you know. So I'll take this one over any of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not stealing from you now, so that's a plus.
You should be happy.
Yeah, but I believe my calling is to help other mothers and children.
Oh, hey,
So I have totally worked my way up at Hope City, and now I'm the women's program director at
I
Hope
know
City.
you are.
I'm the street outreach worker. I go into homeless camps. It's so hard because I know people struggle when you're in the depths of addiction.
Right.
You're just coming for everybody. So sometimes I still get hurt by people. I mean, they just call me all sorts of names.
They just lash out
They
because
lash,
they're hurting.
you know. So then sometimes I just met Jesus about 1.5 years ago. So I'm like taking out my earrings. I'm like, you just sucked the Holy Spirit right out of me. But I'm like, no, we're a new creation. We're not going to do that. But I feel like the lucky one with Presley. Like, she's growing up. She didn't have to worry about heartbreak or trying drugs, experimenting drugs, and it be fentanyl. She's literally waiting for me for eternity.
Yes.
And I have eternal perspective now. You know, Psalm 91, like, he commands his angels to protect us and guard us in all of our ways, and I know he's doing that. I know he's doing that. The first verse I found just opening my Bible is Exodus 14:14. I'll fight for you. Just sit still, just a little longer. So that's what I'm doing is I'm sitting still. I'm doing the footwork. This is really hard, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my whole life. And I hurt, yes, but I know she's with Jesus. I know she's with Jesus, and I know he's not a liar and he's not wrong, and he has plans that are good for me.
Amen.
We don't know where Nick is, but we know where she's at.
Yeah,
There's no doubt,
absolutely.
no question where
Absolutely.
Presley's at.
Absolutely.
You know, we were talking in the car, I think it was, or maybe it's at the table, about how, you know, when we've gone through things, and we're coming out on the other side. We may not be all the way out, but we're getting healed. You know,
Yeah.
we're being comforted. You know, now you're in a position now where you can comfort
Yeah.
because you've been comforted.
Yeah.
But also you can speak with authority
Yeah.
because you've walked it out. And so, you know, like when women come to Hope City, and of course, you know, everybody has a tragic story.
Sure.
Not like yours, but a tragic story. What do you tell women first step? Because you understand,
Yeah.
and you can speak into their life because you've been there. You know the pain, but you also know the comfort. What
Yeah.
would be the first few things you would say to some woman who's just off the rails hurting?
You know, I really love what we do at Hope City, especially, you know, women were never my friends in addiction. It was always a competition or, you know, backstabbing. So the culture for upstairs has really changed, where we link arms and we do this together. If one of you can't stand that day, then we help you up. We put one foot in front of the other, eyes forward, feet forward, heart forward. We're going to do this together. We're in this together because really we want an eternal perspective, and we're all hurting from something.
Yeah.
We don't need to hurt each other anymore. So it's really coming and rallying around each other and praying for each other. I mean, the first thing that I was taught was get up and make your bed. If you didn't do anything all day long, at least your bed was made. You know,
That's
if all you
good.
did was not use that day, that's a successful day. You know, and it's just helping the next guy behind you because it is so painful.
What would you say would be, I mean, I'm putting you on the spot, but, you know, we have breakthroughs. I mean, growth is slow. Often
Yeah.
we can't even detect it because he's so
Right.
subtle and quiet. But can you remember like a real breakthrough in your healing along the journey? And if you don't
You know,
stress
I don't
about
know a specific one. I just remember waking up and not wanting to die.
That's major.
It's huge.
Yes.
Because I didn't know how to put my feet on the floor without putting a needle in my arm first. Like I always had to have something ready. So when I came and I had to get up and there was no drugs to help me get up, I'm like, what do you do? How do you do this? This is so hard just to get out of bed. And so, but someone was there with me. You know, you linked arms with somebody. You made friends with someone. They're like, no, we can do this. Let's just get up and get in the shower, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get dressed, and then we'll go from there. I mean, it's these little baby steps, because sometimes it's just so painful just to even get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I just think that's humans. Like, who isn't sad?
Oh, yeah.
Who isn't depressed? Who isn't anxious? We're living.
Having to work through something.
We're living. Of course, we're alive. Thankfully, we're alive. But of course, we're hurting. So I think what helped me the most is having people help me, encourage me, speak life into me, speak life over me, because I didn't want to do it. Yeah. He is waiting on me.
Amen.
And again, some days are harder than others, but now everybody knows her name that is watching this, that is listening to this. Presley, like, she's going to change things. And she changed. She was real and she was mine. And I just want people to know her story, even if it's about how she died. Yeah. I love talking about her. I don't get to talk about her anymore. We just took a picture a second ago. I love pictures. Mm-hmm. Those pictures that I share on Facebook are the only ones I have of her. Yeah. And they're mine.
Yeah. Amen.
So I don't have any more children. I don't know if the Lord puts that in my path, but I love being a mommy to other people.
I was about to say, I see you in the prayer room all the time, holding somebody, loving on somebody's baby,
and they all love me. And sometimes I think maybe they can see Presley, like their little child eyes. You know, maybe they see Presley around me or something.
Well, just
they
remember
just
this.
feel love.
Yeah.
The next guy that comes along and wants to be involved with you has to go through me.
Yeah,
there you go.
Perfect.
That may not be too easy.
I should have done that the first time.
Of course, he may be so hard to end up being a nun, and she won't get married at all.
Hey, if that's it, that's keep me out of trouble. Thanks for listening, guys.
Oh,
love you so much.
Bless you. Love you too.
Love you too, Stephanie.
Thank you.
You're truly an overcomer.
And I just want to leave you with this, that I should be dead, I should be in jail. You can't convince me that Jesus isn't real. I'm truly a new creation. And I just want to encourage you that he loves you and He has good plans for you, and that He loves you. That's all I want to say.